Okay, before we commence, let us take a few moments to worship the Supreme One, the infinitely compassionate One, the Sublime One, our teacher, the Supreme Buddha. To do this, can you all be upstanding and recite the Namaskar with me? Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay. You may now all be seated. Before we commence, let's take a few moments to make a firm determination. May the great qualities of the people, of the legends, whose every footstep were a blessing to the earth, may their qualities be part and parcel of me. May these qualities sink deep into my heart, and may I also be like them. May I also, by the power of all the merits that I have done throughout samsara, be an arahat like them. Okay, making a firm determination like that, let's begin. Okay, I would like you all to think about the last time you were ill. For some of you, you are currently ill. For some others, last week, last month, and for the fortunate ones, maybe a few months ago. Whether it's a headache, stomach ache, back pains, anything. Now, that is life. We all grow up and we all become ill every now and then. But how would you like to live a life without a single illness? What would you give? What would you give to live a life without a single illness? Without getting ill at all, not even the simplest of headaches, or a stomach ache, or any pain here and there. How would you like to live 160 years like that? You see, back in the time of the Buddha, there was one monk who never got ill, who never had a headache, stomach ache. You know, all those pains you go through, all those aches. So headache, tummy ache, neck ache, toothache, none of that. Zero. There was one monk. And his name was the Venerable Bakkula. So his story starts back, far back, beyond most others. His story starts 100,000 plus one incalculable eons before the time of the Buddha, Gautama. So at that time was the Buddha Anomadasi. You see, he grew up in a pretty wealthy environment. He was a Brahmin, and Brahmins were also very well respected. And so he grew up learning the three Vedas and he mastered them. He completed learning all of them. He learned to the maximum. But you see, the moment he finished learning all this, he decided he would want to contemplate on his life. And so he sat down on his seat and started to think, Now, I've mastered the three Vedas. I know this much, I have this much knowledge, but what is the point? What is the point of learning this much? By mastering these three Vedas, obviously I know more than most people in this country. Maybe in this world, in fact. But what is the point? What is the point of knowledge? What have I achieved? So, I'll learn today, I'll learn tomorrow, the next day, the day after that. But there is no rest. Because knowledge is infinite. There is no rest. I will be learning for the rest of my life. So what is the point? Now this made this Brahmin think. Me going to school, me going to universities and all these places to learn these three Vedas. There was no point of doing any of that. What is the point of living in a lay life? After thinking like that, he decided that he would like to ordain, to become an ascetic. So he went to the Himalayas and went into asceticism. After some time living in the Himalayas, he was able to achieve a lot of mental states, so mental concentration, abhinyas, jhanas, and so on and so forth. And within the years, he also accumulated a lot of students as well, around 500 students. But one day, through his meditation, he saw someone with powers that has no limits, someone with knowledge that was infinite, someone who has found the end to all questions, someone who can answer anything that was asked. Students would come and tell him about some gems. And so he looked in, what are these gems? Who are these gems? Was the answer he got in return. When he asked, what are these gems? These very rare, special gems. The answer he got back in return from his students was, you've asked the question wrong. It's not what are the gems, it's who are the gems. They explained that there are three noble gems, the triple noble gems. The Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha. The students started to explain who they are, what they are, the qualities they have. And so the Brahmin was intrigued, was amazed. He wanted to meet this so-called Buddha, this person who had found the end to suffering. And thinking that he must see him, he made his way to the Buddha, Anomadasi. But in his head he thought, but no matter what he says, I will not let go of my asceticism. No matter how much faith, no matter how much conviction I may have, I will not let go of it. Because this is my path to happiness. I can't give up my jhanas either. So he made his way through the forest to the Buddha Anomadasi. You see, at this time, the Buddha Anomadasi was ill, was sick. He had flatulence, and he was in pain. You see, Buddhas are not gods. They also get ill. They are people who are also with a body of a human. And human bodies are a fountain of illness. So, when this Brahmin went to the Buddha, he saw that the Great One, the Supreme One, is in pain. So using his states of concentration, he looked at what is causing the Buddha's pain, and saw that he had flatulence, which was giving him an extreme stomach pain. And so he went back with his students to the forest and told his students that the Buddha Anomadasi is ill, he's sick. Let's all come together and let's make a medicine for him. So Looking with his states of concentration, so his samadhi, he saw the way to make this medicine. So he taught his students to go into the forest and get these ingredients. So roots of some trees, leaves from others, sap, and so on and so forth. And so he set his students out, and his students scoured the forest looking for these ingredients. When they came back, their teacher started to prepare the medicine. And so they made a syrup. And so they all went back to the Buddha. And this Brahmin went to the Buddha and gave him some of the syrup. In a matter of seconds, the illness was lifted. The illness disappeared. The Buddha was no longer in pain. So the Buddha, Anomadasi, sat on his own seat and started to preach. The one who gave me medicine, and because of that, relieved me of my disease, I shall tell you what will happen to him. So all of you, listen very carefully. For 100,000 eons, he will be delighted in the world of gods. When the instruments are sounded there, which means the conch and all these instruments, this one constantly will be thrilled. Then, coming to the world of humans, incited by his wholesome roots, 1,000 times he will be king, a king who turns the wheel of the world. So he will become a world-turning monarch. In the 55th eon hence, he will be king named Anoma. So we're talking about eons, right? So 100,000 eons, he'll be in the gods, and for another 55 eons, he will be king of the world, a world-turning monarch. Then he'll be a king called Anoma, lord of the grove of rose apples, victorious on all four sides, a wheel-turning monarch with great strength, possessor of 7 gems. He will exercise sovereignty, making even the heavens shake. But whether born human or a divine being, he'll be one with little disease. Throwing away his possessions, he'll transcend illness in the world. Eons beyond measure from now, so incalculable eons in the future, arising in the Okaka clan, the one whose name is Gautama will be the teacher to the world, so the Gautama Buddha. Worthy heir to the one's Dharma, Dharma's legitimate offspring, knowing well all the defilements, he'll reach Nibbana undefiled. Burning up all his defilements, he'll cross the flood of clinging. He'll be the teacher's follower, the monk whose name is Bakkula. Having come to know all of this, the Supreme Buddha Gautama, seated in the monks' assembly, will place him in the foremost place. Now, just for healing the Buddha, do you not see how much merits that was? Eons after eons in heavens and so on and so forth. But that's not the best part. He will become an arhat. It is prophesied that he will become an arhat. You see, here's the thing. Where do merits come from? Merits are accumulated in the mind. It is the mind that decides whether something's good or bad, or meritorious or demeritorious. So for all of you who give the Buddha medical herbs or gilampasa, if you offer it right, your end will be Nibbana as well. Your life will end with Nibbana. Because again, you're offering it to the qualities of the Supreme Buddha. So you will end with was the prophecy of becoming an arhat. And so, this Brahmin was amazed, just because he offered medicine to the Buddha with his students. He was able to get this much. And so, he was delightful. He was delighted to hear such things. And so he wished, may through the power of all the merits I have done by offering to the Buddha, may I never get ill, whether this illness was big or small. May I be free from all illness. You see, when he wished for being free from all illness, what is the disease or what is the illness of samsara? Rebirth. So he wants to be free from that as well. Now imagine that. He wished to be free from samsara, the disease of samsara. After he passed away, he was born in the Brahman realms due to the fact that he practiced these jhanas, and he was always intrigued by these jhanas. He was born in the Brahman realm. And just like the Buddha Anom Dasi prophesied, he was born as the great King Sakra. He was born in the heavenly plains. All the way until the time of the Buddha Padumuttara. Now think about this, right? From one Buddha to another. He was born in the heavenly plains. So at that time he was born in Hansavati as a merchant. You see, his parents were very religious. They gave alms and they listened to the Dharma and they visited the temple. So because of that, even this merchant made it a habit to frequent the monastery, to visit it frequently, because that was what his parents did, and that's what he would do. Because his parents inspired him to give danas and do merits and so on and so forth. It's because of his parents, he frequented the monastery often. And when he went to the monastery, he would often listen to the Buddha Padumuttara's sermons. But there was one day that changed his life forever. Changed his journey forever. Because you imagine back at that time when he was a merchant, his only aim was, you know what, I want all my businesses to succeed. I want to have a lot of money, I want to have this, I want to have that, I want to have a good family, I want to have a house, a good horse, carriage, because they didn't have cars back at that time, right? And all this. But one day, his life changed forever. That was the day he went to the temple. He went to this monastery and sat down, ready to listen to another sermon from the Buddha Padumuttara. But that day was different. Why? At the end of the sermon, the Buddha Padumuttara called a certain monk to the front of the audience and said, "The foremost among the monks with good health is my son, so-and-so." And so that's when he decided, you know what? I want to be like him. I want to be the foremost with good health as well. You see, every Arhat and Arhat Mahinin we've talked about, they always had a role model. Back in their previous lives, they always had someone that they looked up to. You see, instead of giving alms for 7 days, he spent the rest of his life doing as much merits as he possibly could. He did as much merits as he possibly could, whether it was small or big. But each time he did this, he made it clear, may by the power of the merits, may I be like that monk, the foremost among the monks with good health. You can imagine every time he became ill, every time he had a headache, every time he had a stomachache, the first thing that will come into his mind is, my aim is to be the foremost among monks with good health. May I never be ill. If I achieve my goal, I'll never be ill. So that's what I want to be. That's who I want to be. And so obviously, without a doubt, when his life ended in the heavenly abodes, and as a human, but each time he never had an illness. Not as a deva, not as a human. None. And this carried on until the Buddha Vipassi, where he was in the town of Bandhavati. As you may remember, the Buddha Vipassi's father, or lay father, had invited him for alms just after he ordained. And so they all made their way to this almsgiving, and so they went into this deer forest. You see, at that time was not a great time to go through a forest, because there was a very poisonous flower. And this poisonous flower bloomed at this time, and which meant that, and therefore the monks, 780,000 monks, they became ill. And so because of this poison flower, 78,000 monks became ill. And so most of them decided that they can't go further. They couldn't continue the journey. So they sat in this day park on the floor. Some of them sat down, some of them lied down. Some of them were sleeping. But most of them were very ill, coughing and all these other symptoms. But at that time, the great Arhat Bakkula was born as an ascetic. And he learnt about the triple gem. Again, he saw through his samadhis that there were these triple gems, and so the Buddha, the Dhamma and Sangha, and these are great people. These are great things, great gems. And so he thought that I must see him. I must see the Buddha. And I must listen to his Dharma. But again, he thought, but no matter what I do, I will not let go. I will not give up my asceticism. I won't give up. I won't stop my jhanas. I will have them because they are my happiness. And so he made his way through the forest, where he saw a monk on the floor, covered from head to toe, asleep. And he went a bit further and saw another monk sitting up and coughing, and his handkerchief had some blood stains on it. Another monk, he saw that he was shivering uncontrollably. And so seeing this, it wasn't a sight. Imagine seeing 78,000 people ill. The whole deer park was full of monks who were ill. Almost everyone was ill except the Buddha and his chief disciples. And so he went to the Buddha Vipassi and worshipped him and asked, Venerable Sir, I can see that most of your monks are very ill. Please give me permission to cure them, to give them some medicine. And so the Buddha Vipassi accepted his wish. And so this ascetic looked through his samadhi and found various cures. He made these medicines and gave them to the monks, gave it to the Mahasangha. And each of them improved their health. They got better instantly until they were cured. He helped cure 780,000 Mahasangha. These were monks who practiced their path. These were monks who were either arahats or on their way to becoming arahats. You can imagine the amount of merit that he accumulated. It was almost limitless. And so, because of his asceticism, he was born in the broken realms, but he had a lot of merit with him. Due to his merits as well, he was born in the broken realms until the Buddha Kashyapa. You see, we've all heard that the birth of a Buddha is so rare, but if you look at Bakkula's life, he met 1, 2, 3, 4 Buddhas. And 5, we include his last life with the Buddha Gautama. Do you not see how lucky he is? Lucky in one sense, and unlucky in another. Why? Lucky because he got to meet 5 Buddhas. Unlucky because it was only his 5th Buddha that he was able to become an Arahant. But he was more lucky compared to us, because think about it. How many Buddhas do you think we've passed? How many Buddhas have we offered alms to? Again, infinite. And yet, we're still in Sansara. Whereas the Venerable Bakkula has escaped. So he was born in the city of Benares. When his father passed away, he inherited the house. And this house belonged to his fathers, 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 and he goes on. So this house has been passed down from generation to generation. Which is good because, which meant he had a very old house, but which is bad because parts of his house were decaying. Parts of his house were falling apart. You can imagine that there wasn't any concrete or cement to put them all together. It was most likely made from clay or wood. And because he was from a rich, high caste, probably from rocks as well. But everything decays. Everything will fall apart in the end, right? So his house was decaying. And so he decided that he would like to rebuild his house, to fix everything. The holes in the roof, the walls. For this, but he needed a lot of wood. And so he decided to take some tools with him, his axe, maybe a hammer, some other tools, with him to the forest to cut some wood for his house. So he decided to take some food with him as well, because you know when he will come home. So he went into this forest and went deeper and deeper and deeper, looking for the best wood of rare trees. So we're not talking about trees that he found regularly, like you can imagine like rubber trees or all these other sort of regular trees. He wanted to look for the most rarest trees. So you can imagine mahogany and all these other trees. Until he came to a part of the forest which had a clearing, which had something constructed on it. As he went closer, he realized that it wasn't an ordinary building. Although it looked run down, although it looked like it was a mess, it wasn't an ordinary building. It was actually a monastery. Now he decided to go inside this monastery just to have a look around. Maybe find a place to have his meal. So I went through the front gate and saw that most of the buildings had collapsed. Like roofs had holes in them. Walls had cracks in them. So you can imagine it almost was like a ghost village. When he went to the heart of the monastery, he heard some sound. People talking. How can people live in a place like that? He went and saw that there wasn't just 1 or 2 monks. There was a whole assembly of monks. Each of them lived in this monastery. He decided he wanted to leave. He wanted to go and complete his task. But you can imagine when he came to the gate and he tried to open the gate, you can imagine the great gate probably fell off. Now, he was stuck. Why? Because he really wanted to refurbish his house. Because his house had maybe 1 or 2 holes in the roof. His house was run down. His house needed some refurbishing. But then when he looked on the other side, he saw this monastery needed refurbishing as well. So in the gate, he was stuck. He was in the middle of a decision. What can you do? Either it was his house or the monastery. He probably took some time. He probably took some time to contemplate on, to decide on what he would like to refurbish. There's obviously not enough wood for them both. Because we're talking about rare trees. There's not enough rare trees to construct the monastery and his house. It's either one or the other. At that moment, he decided, you know what? My house is not important. My house, I live in this house. He may have had a family, but he thought that, you know what? They're not important right now. I want to construct, I want to refurbish this derelict monastery. I want to build this monastery. Have made a firm determination that he's going to do it. He went in the forest, cut down rare trees, and started to prepare the wood. Now, you can imagine that we're talking about a monastery. A monastery with an assembly of monks, and this person was working all by himself. I don't think it took him a day or two to complete the monastery. To be honest, he may have taken months, maybe even years. He may or may not have help. But no matter who helped him and who didn't, he was determined to refurbish this monastery. So, he started his work. One building after the other. In the end, he refurbished the poyage for the Hyodian monks. He made toilets, kitchens, ponds for them to shower and wash themselves, hospitals for the sick monks, and even drying rooms for the monks to dry their robes. Now, he did the best he possibly could. It may have taken him maybe even a year to complete this, but he did it. See, he had the choice of either refurbishing his house or refurbishing this monastery. He thought, refurbishing my house, I can do someday. But this monastery needs my help. And you can imagine the amount of merit he accumulated. You see, one of the greatest merits a person can do is help build a monastery. Whether that means to upkeep it or actually build buildings, they're both the same. So building toilets and building kitchens and all this is all great merits, but also sweeping is also a great merit. Because why? If this man didn't sweep the floor, isn't that also something that's going to slowly make the building again decay? So by sweeping the floor, he's preserving the building, which is almost the same as building one. You see, he could have refurbished his house. Refurbishing his house was an option, right? He could have. But refurbishing the monastery, every tooth of the saw that cut the wood, he accumulated merits. Every nail he hammered into the wood, he accumulated merits. Every breath he took, thinking about the monastery, he accumulated merits. And Let's say he did that for a year. 365. We're guessing, right? Days full of merits. Now think about the amount of merits he accumulated. Because you can imagine, even after he refurbished this monastery, he decided that he would like to make new buildings as well. And so he accumulated a vast amount of merits. And so when he passed away, he was born in the heavenly planes. Until the time of the Buddha Gautama, where he was born in the town of Kosambi. The moment he was conceived into this womb, because of all the merits he'd done in the past, with these 4 Buddhas, this family became very wealthy. Their businesses, their jobs will prosper, and luck was on their side. You see, the moment they conceived the baby, so it was not born yet, the moment he arrived in his mother's womb. So after 10 months, he was born. And so this mother thought, my son is very meritorious. The moment he was conceived, our lives have become so much better. He has made me very fortunate as well. So, if we're able to extend his life, he'll be able to spread his fortune to many more people. And we'll be able to be fortunate for a longer time. You see, back in those days, there was a tradition. If you bathed a newborn baby in the river Yamuna, you had a very long life. So she decided that she wanted to bathe her son in this river. So she arranged a parade with all her family, with all her friends, with all the wet nurses, the nannies, and everyone. And they went to this river. You see, he was safe. He had a lot of people surrounding him. Wet nurses, nannies, and everyone was right next to this baby, protecting him. And so his mother went in this river, took the baby in her hand, and started to bathe the baby. But what she didn't see was behind her an enormous fish was making its way to this woman. It was moving quite fast. It's making its way straight to this woman. And so one wet nurse looked at the horizon and saw this fin poking out to the water and started to scream. Saying, "Look out, there's a big fish coming your way." And she started to run away. When everyone else saw this fish, started to scream and run away as well. Now the mother became scared, looked behind her and saw this fish pop its head out the water and open its big mouth, ready to take a bite. She threw the baby into the air and started making her way to the shore, forgetting she had a baby in her hands. And so, when the baby landed in the water, this fish swallowed the baby whole. But due to the power of the merits he accumulated, not a single scratch was on the baby. Instead, the baby was actually pretty happy. This was because there's all this excitement, and almost you can imagine it was warm as well inside the fish. So the baby was happy. And also due to his merits, the fish became a bit noxious. That this baby wasn't going to digest. And so because of this uncomfortable feeling in his stomach, this fish swam as fast as he possibly could for 30 yojans. which is around 780 kilometers. So we're talking about a big fish swimming very fast, 780 kilometers, where this fish was caught in a net and hauled into the boat of a fisherman. Now, these fishermen were amazed. This was an enormous fish, and he caught it in a net. Usually, enormous fish would see this net or sense the net and swim away, but this one was caught. Normally what they would do is, when the fish were on the boat, they would cut off the meat and store the meat and sell the meat for some price. But they thought, if we sell this massive fish whole, we're going to get a lot of money for it. So when their day ended, and it was time for them to go onto the shore to sell these fish. So you can imagine, some of these fishermen held these small pieces of meat, whereas one of these fishermen held this massive fish. They ran round the town saying, enormous fish for 1,000 gold coins. It's a brilliant deal. It's amazing, large fish. Enough to feed a family for weeks. But it looked like the people in town weren't going to accept the fish. They didn't want the fish. You see, he went round, this fisherman, with this large fish, selling this fish for 100,000 gold coins, but no one accepted it. At last, there was one house left. And so this fisherman went and knocked on the door, where a young woman came out. You see, this was a house that belonged to a childless couple. So this fisherman told this young woman, "Madam, would you buy this large fish? Look at it, it's enormous, right? For 100,000 gold coins." Remember, this was the last house, so he had to sell this fish somehow. This woman was like, "No, I don't want it. Thank you for the offer, but I don't want it." 500 gold coins? No, thank you. Go away. I don't want this fish. And this fisherman reduced it until this woman said, "Okay, if you really want to sell this fish, I'll buy this fish for 1 gold coin." Now the fisherman had nothing else to do but accept it. So she gave the 1 gold coin and took the fish. You see, she was pretty happy because this fish was enough to feed herself, her husband, and her family, her parents, for maybe a week. She cooked it right. So she herself took this fish to the kitchen and laid it on the table. Instead of letting the cook do it, she wanted to do it. She wanted to cook this fish. So she went and found the sharpest knife she possibly could and split the stomach of the fish to gut the fish so it can be cooked right. So very carefully she used the knife to split the stomach, and just before she put her hand in to take the guts out, she saw something move inside it. She screamed and stepped back. So she went a bit closer and again looked inside. At the moment she saw a human hand. This time she screamed and ran out of the kitchen. And then she went back to the fish and saw a baby inside. And the baby wasn't dead, it was a live, real life baby. This time she screamed, but it wasn't a scream of fear, but a scream of joy. She has been trying with her spouse to have a baby for many, many months. Many years, in fact. But wasn't able to. But today, inside a fish she bought for 1 gold coin, found a child. So she picked up this baby, gave it a quick rinse, and ran into the rest of the house shouting, I found the baby, I found the baby. She went to her husband and said, look, husband, I found a baby in the fish. You won't believe it. See? Can we keep him? Can we keep this baby? Please. We've been trying for a long time now. Okay, please keep him. You see, even though this husband was happy, he knew that it was wrong just to keep this without asking the king. So they went to the king and explained to the king, saying, you see, my wife, she bought a big fish, a large fish, for 1 gold coin and found this baby inside it. What should we do? What should we do with it? The king thought for a moment and said, well, he found the baby. The baby looks like he's very meritorious to be able to survive in a fish. I say, he has no mother, no father, so you should keep him. This couple was over the moon. They finally had a baby. But the news, you see, the news of this couple finding a baby in the fish spread like wildfire throughout the whole country, from one person to the other. Eventually even the story changed, saying a fish gave birth to a baby, but everyone knew that that couldn't happen. Until the news reached the baby's mother. The baby's mother was sobbing, was crying over the fact that she had lost her baby. And so when she heard that a baby was born from a fish, she knew that that was her son. She knew that that fish probably swallowed her son, and her son was very meritorious, so her son wouldn't have died. That was probably her son. And so she went with her family all the way to Rajagaha, so from Kosambi to Rajagaha, to claim the baby. Now we're talking about 2 mothers and 1 baby. So the baby's mother went to the adopted mother and said, hey, that's my baby. Excuse me? That can't be your baby. I found it, so it's mine. Okay, then where did you find him? In a fish. You probably heard a lot of stories. I found my baby in a fish. Well, you know, that fish that you found, that's the fish that swallowed my baby. So that baby belongs to me. Well, if the fish swallowed your baby, that means you're not a great mother, are you? That's when all hell broke loose. Insults were slung one to another. You can imagine that there was chaos inside that house. The fight went so far that the king had to come and take the baby. And so this king asked, okay, what's the problem? So the adopted mother said, look, Your Majesty, it's about a few days before, with a baby who was born from a fish. Yes. And you said that this baby belonged to me? Yes, it does. Well, she says that it's her son, because she gave birth to him. That can't be right? He belongs to me. So the king asked the other woman, saying, so you gave birth to this child, right? Yes. And as I'm guessing that this fish swallowed the baby whole, or some all the way from Kosambe to Rajagaha? Yes, that's what I'm saying. And so this king started to think. The king thought, so one of them gave birth, but the other one found. So who does this baby belong to? In the end, he decided, you know what? He belongs to both of you. Share him equally. The moment the king said this, both their wealth, their businesses started to prosper because the merits of this child spread to both of them. Because now he belonged to both of them. They both started to prosper. They both were very meritorious. They were both very fortunate. And money used to flow in for both those families. And so when they had to think of a name, you imagine they started to argue. But in the end, they decided to name him Bakkula. Bakkula, which means Kula means clans, and we imagine Ba means two. Because he was born in two clans, he belongs to two clans, he was named Bakkula. So he was owned by two families, and these two families loved him very dearly. So you can imagine this baby was very spoilt at birth. Anything he wanted, he would get. And both his families were extremely rich. They belonged to very high caste. So when he came of age, so around the age of 16, one of his families gave him 3 palaces to his name. And so when he went to the other family also gave 3 palaces to his name. So in total, he had 6 palaces. And each of these palaces were filled with amazing food, delicacies, with all the games that he possibly could desire. And there was hardly any males. These 6 palaces were filled with beautiful women. They are palaces full of sensual pleasures. And yet, he lived no longer than 4 months in a single palace. So, which meant he rotated in these 6 palaces every 4 months. And he lived like that for 80 years. Bakkula lived a life of sensual pleasures for 80 long years. But after that, his life changed dramatically. His life changed instantly. His life took a very interesting turn. Because one day in one of his palaces, he started to hear about someone called the Buddha, and people called monks and sangha and stuff like that. And so he decided to ask everyone who they were. And he got a lot of answers. From each palace, he would get new information about this Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha, the triple gem. And he started to learn about what you do in a monastery, how you're supposed to listen to the sermons, and so on and so forth. And so, therefore, he decided to go meet the Buddha, to go see the Buddha, to go listen to his sermons. The moment he started listening to the sermons, at the end, he became a Sotapanna. He became a stream enterer. And decided that his 80 years living a life full of sensual pleasures were useless. There was no point. There's no point living a lay life, so let me go and ordain. And decided he wanted to ordain. You see, after the day of his ordination, after 8 days, he becomes an Arhat. You see, the day after he was ordained, the beautiful women of each palace would take in turns to offer robes for 14 days. You see, they were happy for him for ordaining. Instead of crying and weeping and lamenting over the loss, they started doing merits. And he was ordained for 80 long years. So 80 plus 80 is 160. And he lived those 80 years with no illness. So 160 years without a single illness. No headaches, no stomach aches, no cold, no flu, no corona, nothing. He had no illness. And also, he was never, and also, he had the 4 requisites. And so, within time, the Buddha, after one of his sermons, gathered everyone and bestowed a title to the most venerable Bakkula, saying, "The foremost among monks with good health is my son, Bakkula." So he achieved his goal. He achieved something that he wanted. You see, most of us will make goals and things that we want but never ever achieve them. Because either it's too hard, too difficult, but really, you can do it. You see, the Venerable Bakkula wanted to, and he did. He really wanted the title, and he got it. You see, one day, the Venerable Bakkula was staying near Rajagaha in the bamboo grove, in a place called the School's Feeding Ground. You see, one of his friends, old friends, a naked ascetic called Kashyapa, Achala Kashyapa, who had been a friend of Bakkula in one of his lay lives, right? Came up to him and they exchanged their greetings. And they started to talk about, or had a general conversation. And then Achala Kashyapa asked, "Venerable Bakkula, how long have you been ordained?" "It's been 80 years, friend." "But in these 80 years, how many times have you engaged in coitus?" Now, you may be surprised. Why did Achala Kashyapa ask such a thing? That is not something you should ask a monk. But Achala Kashyapa knew who the Venerable Bakkula was in his lay life. Now, you can imagine what sort of life Bakkula or the Venerable Bakkula used to live. And so the Venerable Bakkula replies saying, "Friend, you shouldn't have asked me such a question. That is wrong of you to ask. Rather, you should ask me, in these 80 years, how many times have you had a lustful thought?" "Okay then, Venerable Sir, how many times have you had a lustful thought?" "In these 80 years, I don't recall a single moment where I've had a sensual thought, a lustful thought." Now, Achala Kashyapa was amazed. Didn't know what to say because his friend hasn't had a lustful thought for 80 years. Where in his lay life, that was the wrong question he should have asked. In his lay life, he should have asked, how often did you not have a lustful thought? And the Venerable Bakkula carried on saying, "In these 8 years, I don't remember having a thought of harming others. Now, the Acharya Kashpa was again very surprised. Really? What about all the times you did this and this and this in your lay life? But now, not a single thought for 80 years. And then the Venerable Bakkula carried on saying, never have I had a single thought of anger in 80 years. Not a single moment in these 80 years did I have a thought, lustful thoughts of harming others, thoughts of anger. Not a single thought has arisen in me like that. And he carries on saying, in 80 years, I don't recall accepting a robe from a householder. Cutting a robe with a knife, sewing a robe with a needle, dyeing a robe, sewing a robe at cutting the time. Why? Because he didn't need to. He carries on saying, accepting an invitation, having such a thought, if someone would invite me, sitting inside a house, eating inside a house, which meant he lived his life begging for alms, going round for alms. He lived his life with only 3 robes. And he carries on saying, I don't recall getting caught up in the details of a female's appearance, teaching a female even so much as 4 lines, going to a nun's quarters, teaching the nuns, teaching the trainee nuns, teaching the novice nuns, giving ordination, giving higher ordination. So, which means he has never associated a woman. Not because it was bad, because he never had the thought of doing it. He never had a lustful thought. He may have talked with them, but never had a lustful thought. And then he carries on saying, I don't recall being looked after by a novice monk, bathing in a sauna in hot water, bathing in bath powder, looking for a massage from other monks, being ill even for as long as it takes to pull a cow's udder, being presented with medicine. So, like, you know how sometimes we take medicine as precaution, because we may have this illness, and so I'm going to take this medicine to cure it. He's never had that either. He carries on saying, leaning on a headrest, lying down, which meant he's never slept lying down with his back on a bed. Now you can imagine what's going on in Acharya Kashpa's head. What? How? How is that possible? The Bakkula I knew had clothes made from various tailors, from cloths of velvet, cotton, georgettes, and all these fancy clothes and all this. You were a person who ate only the divinest of food, the rarest. But now you don't even accept an invitation. Just go around for alms, having everything mixed into one. You were a person who lived in 6 palaces full of beautiful women, living a life in sensual pleasures, but now you don't even look at the details of a female's appearance. Don't even teach a nun. You've never been ill for 160 years. Now, Acharya Kashyap's heart was already pounding in his chest, getting ready to leap out, saying, how did you do all this? But the Venerable Bakkula carries on saying, friend, it was only for 7 days that I ate alms as a debtor to someone in debt. It was only for 7 days that he ate alms as someone who's in debt, someone with Ragadesha Moha. 7 days. And he says, then on the 8th day I became enlightened. I became an arhat. Imagine that. Imagine being able to say, it was only for 7 days that I was in debt by eating alms. On the 8th day I became an arhat. Acharya Kashyapa couldn't handle it any further. He fell onto his knees and said, Venerable Sir, please accept me. Please let me ordain. If you can change like that, so can I. Me being a naked ascetic, I can change and become an arhat as well. And so, Acharya Kashyapa ordained. And not long after his ordination, Venerable Kashyapa was keen on his path, was diligent. And think about it. If he knew that his friend, a friend who was nose deep in sensual pleasures, so was about to drown in sensual pleasures almost, was able to do it, so could he. And soon he realized the truth and became an arhat as well. Let's not forget that the Venerable Bakkula lived for 160 years. That was after the Buddha's Parinibbana. And if I'm correct, that's even after the first Buddhist council. He soon saw that his lifespan was ending, that his death was nearing. So he went to the temple and told everyone that he's about to pass away, and gathered everyone. And so, in the middle of the crowd, he went through the states of concentration, went to the Teja Samapatti, and was a light. He burst into flames, leaving a bone relic behind. The monks took this bone relic and gave it to the citizens and they got together to build a big pagoda to enshrine the relics. You see, he lived for 160 years. You see, the Venerable Mahakashyapa lived for 120. The Venerable Ananda lived for 120. The Venerable Anuruddha lived for 150. Mahapajatapi Gautami lived for 120. Vishaka lived for 120. But the Venerable Bakkula passed them all and lived for 160 years without a single illness. Like we all heard that the Venerable Anuruddha had stomach aches and all these illnesses. But the Venerable Bakkula, not even a headache. But the one thing that I'd like you to take away from this is a quote. from the Venerable Bakkula. It's a lesson that he gave to everyone. That includes me as well. He states, saying, if one doesn't do what he's supposed to do, so if one doesn't do what he's supposed to do, if one says one but does another, if one doesn't do but doesn't say, if one says but doesn't do, he is indeed insulted by the noble ones. So my question is, are you someone who is insulted by the noble ones? Are you someone who doesn't do what you're supposed to do? Are you someone who says something but does something else? Are you someone who doesn't do something but doesn't say he or she didn't do it? Are you someone that says that they're going to do something but they don't do it? You see, if you are one of these people, you are said to be insulted by the noble ones. So the question is, are you insulted by the noble ones? You see, you've had a life of a monk who lived for 160 years. Without a single illness. But never in the 80 years he was ordained, never the 80 years after he heard the Dharma, was he someone who is insulted by noble ones. And he says, it was all that happened because I met the Buddha. I saw the Buddha. When he said, I saw the Buddha, it doesn't mean he saw it with his two eyes, because anyone with eyes can see the Buddha. When he meant he saw the Buddha, he meant that he saw the Buddha inside him, inside himself. So, there you have it. The story of the Venerable Bakkula. The one who lived for 160 years with not a single illness. That he only ate 7 days in debt. 7 days with Rag Desha Moha after he ordained. On the 8th day he became an Arahat. And remember, his journey started because he heard about the Buddha, the Dhamma and Sangha, and he offered medicine. That's where his journey started. And that is why his journey through samsara ended. You see, merit is something that happens in the mind. You don't need the real Buddha to offer medicine. You see, if you offer medicine to the qualities of the Buddha, if you worship the Buddha because he's worthy of your worship, the end is always Nibbana. Whether it's you just saying sadhu, 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 your end will always be with Nibbana. No matter what merit you do, if you do it to the Buddha, the Dhamma or the Sangha, your end will always be Nibbana. Because remember, that ascetic just offered medicine to the Buddha. And he got 100,000 eons in the heavens and stuff like that, and ... But he'll reach the Buddha Gautama in the Okaka clan and will become an Arahat named Bakkula. Now that is what is special. That is what is great. that in the end, he was prophesied to become an Arhat. Remember, he had the wish to not be ill, because his main aim was to be not to be ill. But if your aim is Nibbana, and every time you do merit you wish to attain Nibbana, you will attain Nibbana. Your end will always end with Nibbana. So, always aim. Always aim and have goals and achieve your goals. If you think you can't let go of things, if you can't let go of sensual pleasures, whether it's food, whether it's games, whether it's all this, remember, the Venerable Bakkula had 8 palaces. He had everything he needed, and he let that all go. He took the leap. He took the leap. And look where he got to. Think about it. 6 palaces full of amazing food, full of everything that he wanted, full of beautiful women. He lived surrounded by beautiful women. And he could let that all go. Then what is your excuse? Alright. Back in those times there wasn't Facebook. Back in that time there was Snapchat, Instagram, YouTube, none of that. So yes, right. There's your excuse, right? If the Venerable Bakkula could let go of 6 palaces, all these little things can also be removed. When is the time when you can play the game Never Have I Ever? I'm saying, never have I ever, in 8 years, had a single thought of lust, of hurting others, of anger. Never have I ever wanted to eat delicious food for 8 years. Never have I ever, for 8 years, looked at someone with desire. Now that is a goal. That is an aim, to be able to say something like that. Never have I ever, in 80 years, done something. When can you say it? When will you be able to say it? Never have I ever had a thought of lust for, doesn't need to be 80 years, for 2 weeks, for a week, for a day. Can you say it? Okay. So this is the story of the Venerable Bakkula. A person who lived 160 years without a single illness. Okay. Let's take a few moments to transfer our merits and conclude. Let us take a moment to transfer the merits we've all acquired by making offerings to the infinite virtues of the Noble Triple Gem, chanting Prith, listening to the Dharma, and engaging in various meritorious deeds today. So first and foremost, let us remind ourselves how incredibly fortunate we are to be in receipt of the Lord Buddha's teachings, and with immense gratitude, let us transfer the merits to the Bhikshu, Bhikshunis, Upasakas, who since time immemorial have protected and preserved the sublime teaching of the Buddha and passed it down to the noble generations of the noble lineage, in form of Tripitaka, which is thankfully available to us to study, to understand, to comprehend the Dharma. Let us also take a moment to transfer the merits we will acquire to all the members of the Mahasangha present throughout the world, including the chief prelates of all the chapters, who have dedicated their lives to the noble path and committed themselves to the betterment of all sentient beings. Let's not forget that among them will be the monks and nuns resident in your local temple and nunneries, who have always been by your side through thick and thin, come rain or shine. Let's also take a moment to transfer merits to Guru Sahib and all of the monks resident at this monastery, as well as Anagarkas and Anagarkas attached to the monastery. Let's all take a moment to transfer merits and transfer Let us all take a moment to transfer these merits and express our gratitude to all those who make great efforts to disseminate the teachings of the Buddha, be that by translating these sermons, sharing them out with others, inviting others to join them. May through the power of the merits, if any of them have been born in the willful plane, may they redeem themselves and be born in the blissful plane. May through the power of these merits, may they abstain from their meritorious deeds, fulfill their meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain supreme bliss nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let us all take a moment to transfer the merits to our devotees, friends of the monasteries, who for sake of merits continue to sustain the Mahasangha. This includes every one of you who provide the Mahasangha with shelter, alms, robes, medicines, as well as those who contribute to the construction of the monastery, as well as those who pass on their know-how, stem their will wishes. May through the power of the merits, may they abstain from the meritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain supreme nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's all take a moment to transfer the merits to our mothers, fathers, husbands and wives, brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins, nephews, nieces, our elders, friends and acquaintances, employers, employees, and all those who made great who helped us, support us, assist us in any way, shape, or form. By the power of these merits, may they be healed in physical or mental ailments, and may they overcome any obstacles in their spiritual progress. May they abstain from their meritorious deeds, fulfill their meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain supreme nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's all take a moment to transfer merits to the devas, brahmas, spirits, demons, Paramit Sakradeva, as well as numerous gods and deities who have committed themselves to protect and fulfill the Sambuddhasasana. Let us also take a moment to transfer merits to our guardian deities who keep watch by us and keep us out of harm's way. May the power of these merits, may they prosper in divine power and wisdom. May they abstain from their meritorious deeds, fulfill their meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain supreme nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let us all take a moment to transfer merits to our ancestors who predeceased us, to all those who've been our families, friends, and acquaintances in this infinite long journey in samsara, and those who helped us, support us, assist us any way they could. Let's take a moment to transfer the merits to them. Let's all take a moment to transfer merits to the members of the armed forces as well as the police force who have sacrificed their lives to protect the peace and harmony of our nation. May all those who lost their lives in the war be their friend or foe, rejoice in the merits required today. Let us also take a moment to transfer merits to those who've lost their lives in natural calamities such as tsunamis, earthquakes, landslides, pandemics, reminding ourselves that among them would have been friends, families to us in this long journey in samsara. Let us take a moment to transfer merits to them. May the power of the merits, if any of them have been born in the willful plane, may they redeem themselves and go on the blissful plane. May by the power of the merits, may they abstain from their meritorious deeds, fulfill their meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain supreme bliss nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Finally, as all resolve, may the power and blessings of all the merits required throughout the day, we may witness the event of many hundreds of thousands of arhats in this blessed land. And finally, may through the power of all the merits we acquired today, you and I and everyone who made this program a success become Arhat Manse, or Arhat Mahin Manse in this very life in the era of the Gautama Supreme Buddha itself. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May the blessings of the Noble Triple Gem be with you all. We now conclude there. May the Noble Triple Gem be with you all.